Hello, and welcome back to the Ladies Wrestling Grio podcast. We are now in week 2 of the ECW Women's Spotlight, and I just want to jump right into it because we're talking about another woman that I really loved from ECW. I loved how her stint in ECW really was an important one because it cemented how one storyline can make the career of several people that are involved in it. And I definitely think that Beulah was one of those people that benefited from the infamous Tommy Dreamer and Raven feud, and how that really catapulted a lot of people that were involved in that to where they had long-standing careers after. That just goes to show how important great writing, um, having a goal with the storyline and seeing it through, and how it can even have many stories involved in it, how far that can really take you. And I think that just like how I feel about Francine and the time that she came into ECW, I feel that Beulah just came at the right time and really, um, to me, helped to solidify the the people that really made up what the face, what the brand of ECW was. I think that Beulah played a huge part in that as well. So it's a no-brainer to take the time to do a full-on spotlight of Beulah's time in ECW. I think that Beulah was also a great catalyst to really work off of things that Francine was doing. She did a really good job adding a certain flavor to what Raven's Nest was doing. She really played well, in my opinion, off of Stevie Richards and Raven, which I will get into. And of course, we can't leave out the amazing chemistry, lifelong level chemistry that she had with Tommy Dreamer that we still love and still love to go back to as fans even today. So let's just go right into Beulah's backstory. ECW was where people really know Beulah from, but at one time she had a one night appearance in Stampede Wrestling back in 1988. She was used to be a fan in the crowd that was riling up and the heels, and they were really taunting her and really making her feel uncomfortable. And this was a tactic to have her then boyfriend at the time, Brian Pillman, come out and defend her because he was really trying to get over as a babyface in Stampede, and it wound up working. Brian had a really good run in Stampede, so I think it was pretty cool that Beulah came in for that one night stint to kind of get a brush of what it would be like to do anything in the industry, whether it just be as a valet or a manager. So that was like her first taste of that. And shortly after that, another opportunity came in wrestling when she was introduced by a friend to ECW wrestler Raven. And at the time, I would love to get like confirmation for it, actually hear about this experience, but apparently at the time, Beulah was dancing a background for Prince, and I guess at the time maybe she wanted to switch off and possibly see what could happen in the wrestling world. So when Raven talked to her, he was apparently very convincing because right after that, Raven made the connection with Paul Heyman to have them talk, and pretty much the rest is history. That's when we get Beulah coming in, making, to me, one of the best debuts that anyone has had in ECW. And Beulah made her debut at Three Way Dance in April 1995, helping Raven defeat Tommy Dreamer. So at the same night, we start to get a bit of background on why Beulah would be coming in and how she plays into this feud. This feud that gained a lot of steam at this point, but after Beulah's appearance got even better, we find out Beulah's background story. And pretty much when Tommy Dreamer and Raven were kids, they attended overnight camp together. They were best of friends at that time. And that's when they met Beulah, who at the time was overweight, and she was in love with Tommy. But Tommy didn't look at her like that. He even rejected her. So I guess in her way to seek revenge, she actually slept with Raven. And of course, we could already see, even with his character in ECW, that probably wasn't the best decision, because that's really not going to be the type of person that you would want to even try to like fathom having a relationship with. So I think that the thing that they wanted to portray with Beulah's character is that that rejection from Tommy still ate at her. And Stevie Richards, who was, of course, Raven's lackey at the time in a Raven's Nest, he really took it upon himself to actually think of a smart plan to have Beulah come in and use that revenge to really get at Tommy, especially because the Beulah that they knew at the time, because even Raven was apprehensive about bringing Beulah in, because for him, Beulah represented this regret that he had, a mistake that he made in his childhood years, and didn't want to think about it anymore. But the moment that Beulah comes out and the crowd sees her, Raven sees her, he starts to think, you know what? You're not that girl that I remember before. You are literally a penthouse model that we can really use to our advantage to get at Tommy. And this definitely worked. So not only is Raven excited about how he can use Beulah to play mind games with Tommy, but he's happy to know that he's not stuck with some hideous looking fling from the past. And she not only becomes a part of the Raven's Nest, she becomes Raven's valet, and hinted at that clearly they were dating at that point. And from that debut on, Beulah becomes this beautiful pawn in the Tommy Dreamer Raven feud. She is the distraction, but also the trophy that Raven holds up constantly to rub in Tommy's face, to make it clear that Raven gets everything that he wants in this rivalry. He has the faithful, dependable, naive soldier in Stevie Richards, and the beautiful woman that at one time worshipped the ground that Tommy walked on in her adolescence. But now she relishes the moments that she can see him in immense pain. Beulah fit right in my opinion, with Raven's Nest. She was the hot girlfriend of the grunge musician, like a wrestler who sought out to make everyone feel discomfort, because truly he was dead inside. He was the master of manipulation who thought that Beulah would be his lifelong accomplice in trying to destroy not only Tommy Dreamer the man, but the idea of what Tommy Dreamer represented. To Raven, secretly, Tommy was what he might have ended up like if someone actually cared for him growing up, like how Tommy had. As we saw, when they would dig into Tommy Dreamer's story in ECW, his background, he came from a very loving family, had tons of stability, and really had people behind him. And obviously, as we saw throughout Tommy Dreamer's stint in ECW, he always represented the guy that had so much heart, and sometimes got into feuds where it seemed like there was no way that he could win, and many times he did lose, but everyone always wanted to root for him because they wanted him to have that moment where he actually would defeat this Goliath that he was going against. And I think what was so good about Tommy and Raven's feud, that stood the test of time, and they always came back to over and over again in ECW, and every time it was always needed at that point in their careers. Raven really tried to project this anger that he had towards his former friend for being able to have a life that he more than likely desired, but of course was never going to admit. And Raven started finding out early on in life that he had the ability to make people believe whatever he wanted to, because honestly, he was playing on things that they really desired. Beulah necessarily wasn't being manipulated. She just felt that Raven can help her in what she already desired, which was to make Tommy pay for breaking her heart at that time. And also knowing that if she came back looking the way that she did, a complete 180 from how she looked in the overnight camp as a probably an insecure teenager, that he was of course going to desire her too, but she wouldn't let him have what he wanted, even if he did not vocalize it. So I just think this was a brilliant storyline that, as we saw as fans, had so many layers that they could peel from and constantly retrack and go back to it. And I think that Beulah, in my opinion, really felt like she doubled down into what her role was and being in Raven's next faction. And I loved how you also had Stevie Richards, who brought her in, but you can kind of see even at that time, even with women like Francine coming on to him and really making it clear that she wanted to be with him, his eye was always on Beulah as well. And of course, that eventually would make her uncomfortable and also probably make her feel that sooner or later she would have to like publicly deny him. But I think that just went into Stevie Richards honestly wanting whatever Raven had because of the way that Raven knew how to manipulate Stevie. Everything that Raven had, even if it wasn't much, Stevie Richards desired that. So obviously Beulah would be no obsession, you know. So every time Tommy was close to getting a victory in his feud with Raven, there was always something that would make him get close to tasting the victory and have it close to his grasp, but he always fell short of it, especially in the early years of the feud. And I believe that Beulah's involvement in this was hands down made it one of the best feuds in wrestling history. And you just couldn't help but feel as a fan, even if, because obviously this was true early on in Tommy's Dreamer's career, that he was seen, especially when he first started on ECW. I think even before it was technically Extreme Championship Wrestling, he was seen as the ultimate babyface, and in a really rough, having a really rough crowd, like the ECW crowd. They actually did not like him at first, but he really started to win the crowd over. So when you get to the point where Tommy is doing that feud with Raven, it ate the crowd up to know that every single time he would get close to even getting a victory, he would always lose. Now, I will say I look back at it now, and I think that's just perfect how you could have feuds where, and this is not really popular now, where you're really showing how hard that obstacle is for that baby face to actually get over the hurdle, get over the mountain of fighting someone that really knows how to play in your mind, that has someone that's also involved in making sure that you never come out on top, and really playing that for a long time. So when the victory eventually happens, the fans just lose their mind. You don't really have that anymore. I think a lot of people like the quick gratification of knowing that instantly we know this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, and eventually in that first bout, usually the baby face takes the win. And I love how this was really played out for the long term, because just like I said in the beginning, not only did it make it one of the most popular feuds of all time, but it also set off the career of everyone that was involved in this feud. And that's a big deal. That really shows how important this feud was actually to the history of ECW. So starting off Beulah's career with her being part of Raven's Nest really helped to build up Beulah. It really, I think, it gave her time, especially being with someone like Raven, that to me is one of the best with in-ring psychology, with promo work. I mean, that goes without saying. For her to be with them, to also be around Stevie Richards, who I don't think gets enough credit for how good he is at creating characters, completely being in it, where you don't really know where the character ends and Stevie begins, and also how good he is. And we definitely got a glimpse of that when he went to WWE later on with Victoria, how good he is actually with working with women and really seeing where they are and then trying to show off their strengths. And I think that Stevie was very good at that. So it was the perfect faction for Beulah to be in at the time where she was beginning. And Raven had his plans, but then Tommy started to get a bit more ballsy and started bringing in some things that he felt could toy with Raven. And due to Raven and Stevie and Beulah trying to play mind games with Tommy, Tommy thought it might be a good idea to bring someone from Raven's past to kind of get him off his game. And Tommy felt that he should bring an unwelcomed ex of Raven's past. And they used no other than Luna Vachon to, turn up the heat and kind of give Tommy something on his side so that he can feel like he was equipped to deal with the Raven's Nest faction. And this was a brilliant idea because this really got under the skin of Raven. And even though Raven kept saying that this was a disgusting part of his past, he never wanted to think about it again. At every chance that he got, he kept attacking Luna. And in many ways, just showing how much of a jerk he is to women because he didn't see Luna as a woman in this. He was extremely brutal in his attacks and Stevie Richards towards Luna. But I love that on the flip side, a lot of fans were excited about this because if you think back on it, we are talking about 1995 at this time. In America, you weren't seeing a lot of women do and be as physical, especially with men in America, as Luna was. She would just get right into it and not feel in any way that she was at a disadvantage from fighting men. But then you add in Beulah's part to play in it. And as we know, at that time, and even Beulah has said she never really received training for her matches, training in general. She would just get a brief run through before her matches with Tommy, with Raven, and whoever she was with at the time to go over what the spots were going to be, how she was going to be contributing if they had a match or even if it was just a run-in. That was more of, what went into her knowing what to do in the ring. So it wasn't formal training, but I like how Luna seemed like she was completely fine for bringing Beulah into more of like a physical turn in her managerial career. And you could see actually that Beulah seemed really excited to bring that into her services with Raven's Nest. And I love how Luna was supposed to have a match with just Beulah to really make it clear that that now the playing field is leveled because now we have a woman, Luna, who could take it to Beulah. And obviously that was Tommy's desire as well for bringing in Luna. But as we saw, every time Luna would even get close to Beulah, Stevie Richards and Raven would just be on the attack. And during Luna and Beulah's official match, Beulah comes out. You're thinking, finally, we're going to see Beulah really have to defend herself and be in the ring on her own and hold her own. She comes out. She gets a huge pop for having a really sexy gear on. She's excited for the match. Luna comes out, obviously as confident and as powerful as she usually was, feeling completely secure in the fact that this was going to be a piece of cake match. And as soon as the bell rings, Stevie Richards and Raven just attack Luna. And of course, Beulah comes into the ring and gets the quick pin, and she feels very happy in this victory. And of course, because Raven is who he is, he knows that immediately the hero, the consummate babyface, Tommy Dreamer, was going to run out to the ring. And of course, that was his chance to be able to attack. And attack he did. They really took it to Luna and Beulah, Luna and Tommy, just really going at it using chairs, handcuffing Luna to the ropes so that she can see Tommy getting attacked. And this did lead up to one of my favorite matches, actually in ECW, where Luna went against Stevie Richards in a cage match, and it was just awesome. Which I will be getting into because with this ECW Women's Spotlight, there are women that had to make important moments in ECW, but they didn't have a full-on run. So I think I'm going to put those moments together and talk about that. And obviously, Luna is certainly going to be a part of that. But I thought that was really cool, and it could have. I'm pretty sure maybe Tommy Dreamer and Raven, everyone involved in the storyline, probably thought that Luna's involvement could have lasted longer. But if memory serves me right, I think shortly after this, Luna actually went to WWE, where she did her run as Shawn Michaels' manager for a bit of time. I believe that's what happened, because I believe that was around 95. So the feud didn't last long, but for the time that Luna was there, she did make an impact, and it did serve well with the storyline that they had to prove that Tommy is just not someone that's going to be walked over. And they're going to continuously just take advantage of the fact that usually, especially at this time, Tommy navigated on his own. He didn't feel like he really needed anyone to protect him or to stand by him. He was usually felt like I go into the lion's den on my own. I protect myself. But I thought that it was good that Tommy was making it clear. I was friends with you before, Raven, so I know what gets to you. At one point in life, we were friends, so I know what gets under your skin too. Just as much as you think you have me figured out, I have you figured out too. But the negative thing for Tommy is that Raven is always 10 steps ahead of everyone. So it just always seemed like even when Tommy felt like he was getting a leg up in their feud, Raven will always come back with something else. So I know that must have grinded his gears. But once again, Raven's Nest, Beulah's involvement in it, perfect writing and amazing matches that were in there. So then we get to Beulah's exit out of Raven's Nest and starting her new journey with Tommy Dreamer, a new type of relationship that they have at this point. So at House Party 1996, Beulah reveals that she's pregnant, and it was Tommy's baby. This, of course, intensified the men's feud. So on the 16th January episode of Hardcore TV, Beulah officially leaves Raven to join forces with Tommy. However, in a shocking twist of events, Shane Douglas reveals that Beulah was not pregnant and that she was actually cheating on him. So at that point, a very angry Tommy demands to know who Beulah was cheating with. And that's when Kimona Wanalea, who was Raven's valet at the time, reveals that she's been fooling around with Beulah. And of course, this gets a huge Jerry Springer-like pop, and Dreamer goes from being shocked to fully accepting this, kissing both ladies. And one of the most famous promos and lines from ECW, Tommy takes both of the girls' heads. He makes it clear he can take them both because he's hardcore, and they both do a triple kiss that gets the crowd going wild. Now, even though technically on paper this is like one of the most famous moments in ECW's history, I've never really been that fond of it. And it made me angry. It was just like, was it necessary for the feud? Because already with Beulah announcing that she had any type of relationship with Tommy, I thought that was big enough, because just like I said, with Raven always feeling that he is 10 steps ahead of Tommy, for him to not have an inkling at all that Beulah was doing something with Tommy, I thought that that was brilliant. And I didn't think that they needed to do anything else. They just needed to really work on now how Tommy got the best of Raven. Because even though he technically did not pin Raven for the 1, 2, 3, he was proving that he took a prized possession of a Raven, but he actually was able to clear the air with Beulah and have like a real relationship with Beulah, which was something that Raven can never have because obviously, just like I said, Beulah was not naive. She knew that Raven was just using her, that she was just a trophy to have to prove to Tommy that he can have something beautiful, something that is a prized possession of any man around here, but especially to you because at the time when you rejected her, you didn't realize how precious she was. And even though I don't care for like her love or affection or anything, I have her and you don't. So clearly Beulah knew that. And she never really took it seriously to be involved with Raven in the way that he possibly wanted. She initially, like anyone that would be in the position that Beulah was in her adolescence, to seek revenge on Tommy and to really make him regret not being with her. But at the same time, clearly those feelings that she had did not go away. And for them to have a full on affair without Raven knowing, I just thought that was brilliant. So that's why I didn't get the point in having the Kimona love triangle twist or whatever. It was just like, well, what was the point of it? It's just, okay, you got the pop, but luckily they didn't like build on that because it just seemed like it took away from the brilliance, the simplicity, and knowing that Tommy got the best of Raven by having someone that he wanted also as a devout follower. Because of course, everything that Raven did, it was all about worshiping him. And to know that Beulah did not sip the Kool-Aid that Stevie Richards did and anyone else that was Raven's flunkies, I felt like the simplicity of that was actually quite brilliant. So we see that Beulah is now with Tommy. They are now in a different stage where you take away the hate and now it is just all love and, to be honest, an obsession with each other at this point. And I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, I also have to state, because I thought this was pretty cool, even though I wish it would have been fleshed out more. I loved that Beulah had like her segment called Beulah's Box, and she would take like a fan's questions, or it's supposed to be like that initially when she announced that she was going to have a Beulah's Box segment on ECW Hardcore TV. She was supposed to take questions from fans. Many times she would be with, she would interview wrestlers in the back, and she had her moment to kind of have her spotlight. And you start to see later on in different promotions like WWE where Sunny had her show. And you see that now where you'll have women that have their own segments. But I thought it was cool that Beulah had that pretty early on before a lot of women started to do that. So that was something that was happening during the time that she was with Raven's Nest. So let's go back to the time that Beulah now is in, where she's with Tommy. And one highlight that I really want to talk about that Beulah was involved in not too long after she got with Tommy was the Raw is War invasion appearance that she had. So on February 24th, 1997, ECW took the invitation from WWE commentary Jerry Lawler and decided to invade Raw and give it a little spice. And this was one of the best Raw shows of that year, in my opinion, and it really helped to shape what WWE would turn into in the next few months. You gotta think about it. A live show, because Raw was live that time, where anything could happen and anyone can show up. That's a big deal for ECW, especially because they were gearing up to have their first pay-per-view, which they worked really hard to get. Because at one point they could have done it earlier, and then they had an incident that happened that really scared off the powers that be that allow you to be able to have pay-per-views, and they thought that opportunity was lost, and then it was able to come back. And that's thanks to the fans at that time that really pushed for wanting to have an ECW pay-per-view. So for them to get that opportunity again, and then have a major platform like Raw is War, and pretty much them making it clear throughout several segments of the show, ECW's top wrestlers will be coming in. They'll be having matches. They'll be making appearances. they'll pretty much be taking over the show. That's something that I don't know if you will ever see again, where you have that type of cross promotion where technically it does not benefit WWE, but they did it anyway. I thought that was pretty cool. And on this episode, Tommy Dreamer had a hardcore match with Devon Dudley. And of course, Beulah had to be in attendance as well. And in the Manhattan Center, you have Paul Heyman announcing Tommy Dreamer as him and Beulah get a hero's welcome. I mean, the crowd was so loud for Tommy and Beulah. And I just love that they had the ability to kind of have like the home crowd, because obviously we know the Manhattan Center was used many times for ECW shows at this point. So, and then also the Philly crowd can just, come right over and bring their vigor to see their main show, as ECW was. And for them to actually be there to cheer, to make it clear, we're a fan of ECW and we're going to be in attendance. And that certainly showed when Beulah and Tommy came out. I just thought it was so cool as I looked back on this moment of seeing Beulah and Tommy come out from the gorilla positions backstage and walking through the giant Raw sign at the entrance ramp. Because that's just like, that was so like not bizarre, but just like, wow, Tommy and Beulah, ECW darlings, are actually on a Raw show. And it just pulls you back from it and say, like, yeah, what if, what if they would have been on Raw? But at the same time, they were so good at making ECW what they were at that point, what it was at that point, the brand, that it was a bit of a shell shock to see them on Raw and to be on WWE TV, because even when they came out, they just have ECW written all over them. The attitude, the bravado, the entrance, everything about it just had ECW written all over it. So it really did make you feel that this was an ECW invasion, and it was awesome. And Paul Heyman's introduction was just amazing. Paul was really going in on that introduction. It gave you chills. And he was really showcasing Dreamer as one of his top guys, and I loved it. And I must say, I'm going to give Vince McMahon his props, because for Vince to give ECW wrestlers precious airtime, especially back then, when this is 97. So at this point, WCW was really establishing themselves on having an amazing show that really was in competition with WWE. So for Vince to give the okay for Paul Heyman to be on commentary all night for that Invasion show, for just like I said, for ECW main guys to be able to have full-length matches, for ECW to be able to really have, to me, the home field advantage with being in New York, in the Manhattan Center, knowing they're going to get a huge pop, possibly more than the WWE guys. That must have shown how secure Vince was. Now, obviously, we know behind the scenes that Vince was actually a fan of Paul Heyman having his own promotion, and obviously even monetarily supporting it, and really liking a lot of guys and gals that were part of ECW. So we know behind the scenes that was the case, but even behind the scenes, if you're really a fan and you might be supporting a little bit, for them to have airtime, precious WWE airtime, that was a big deal. So kudos to Vince for giving us that really awesome episode of Raw that, to me, is still pretty historic. So yeah, I just thought that was a great moment and a good call on Vince, because you would have never seen that in WCW. So anyway, this match on Raw between Tommy Dreamer and Devon Dudley was a big deal. It was a really good match. And Beulah was involved at times, even getting on the ramp to try to help out Tommy, and even almost having a brush with the Dudley boys and getting hurt. But of course, Tommy was there to make the save. We even have where Sandman comes out to help Tommy, when the Dudleys starts to get too handsy at the end. And we have a great segment at the end where the crowd is really going wild for Tommy being in the ring, Sandman coming and hitting his spot with the beer, getting all of the attention at that point. I just thought that was a good way to end off that show. And I love that Tommy and Beulah got that time to be a part of it. Just like I said last week, and it really hits home now after I watched that episode again of Raw. I would have loved if oh my gosh, why can't I think of if Francine would have been a part of Raw, if Shane Douglas would have been a part of that Raw, if you would have had the triple threat faction and then have Tommy Dreamer and Beulah, it would have been awesome. But Shane, for obvious reasons, did not want to come, even though I would still stick to the opinion that if Shane Douglas would have come, I feel like that would have been his FU moment to the Clique to show how big of a star he was in ECW. But I can still hope in my mind and book that moment, Shane Douglas, Francine, triple threat being there, having some type of competition and more than likely a match with Tommy Dreamer versus Shane Douglas, because I think that would have been awesome. But Tommy and Beulah had an amazing moment to be able to really get that rub that they were able to go into WWE TV at this time. So it's a great moment for both. Now we got to get to one of the most infamous moments for Beulah in her career in ECW, and that was her match against Bill Alfonso. This popular match, and dare I say, one of the most popular matches in ECW, happened September of 1997 at the As Good As It Gets event, where Beulah defeated Bill in what Paul Heyman describes as one of the most brutal matches that the company had due to the amount of blood that Alfonso lost. If I'm correct, I think Bill Alfonso lost 1/3 of blood in his body. So yeah, that's pretty insane to think that the match continued after that happened. But at the As Good As It Gets pay-per-view, Tommy Dreamer and Rob Van Dam, who were a part of the match, were eliminated from their mixed tag match. So this left Beulah in the ring with Bill Alfonso, and she immediately showed that she was not afraid to compete with him. And Beulah demands that Bill hit her, and they continue on the match, and he takes her seriously. And what she does reveal is that she has, I believe it was a baking sheet under her shirt, and she whacks him with it really hard, right in the head, close to where his eye is. And immediately you see Bill Alfonso open up and have just a crimson mask. And it looks really sick, really gnarly. But Bill makes a comeback and doesn't take it easy on her. This only causes the crowd to root for Beulah more. And you really start to see that neither one of them are playing games. And it is definitely what I don't think anyone expected from this mixed tag match, that it was going to get this brutal, especially with Beulah being the one that's actually handing that out. Because I like that they didn't have where Beulah hits him with the baking sheet, he bleeds, and that's the end. They really showed that even through that, and then also her having to take the brunt of Bill Alfonso's offense with him giving out some really hard chops, him really not taking it easy on her, that she actually had to push through that as well. I also love how everything that Beulah was doing in the ring, it seemed like she was mirroring something that she feels that Tommy would have done or that he taught her. And this match kind of tops off with a smooth hurricanrana that gets the win for Beulah, and it proves that she's hardcore. I love that outside of the ring, you started to have some of the ECW locker room favorites, the baby faces, come out and really root for Beulah, and they're getting the crowd wild and cheering and rooting the crowd to really get behind Beulah, which wasn't hard because the crowd was already ready for it. You know, they really liked this moment. and Beulah gets that win. You can see genuinely how excited she was to pull this match off, and it was really impressive. And even though Tommy's injured, he comes out and congratulates her and really wants to check on her and make sure she's okay. So I think unanimously, I don't think anyone has ever said anything negative about this match. They saw how much work that Beulah has put into it. It was and also have to give props to Bill, because when you hear the backstory of what happened later on, where he had to get I think a blood transfusion, the doctors were telling him and really encouraging him to stay in the hospital for one night to just get back to where he needed to be health wise, and he still didn't do that. He left because he had a flight to take the next morning, and as we know now about how dangerous that is when you've lost a certain amount of blood. Obviously, it is not recommended that you travel by air at all. So for him to make it through that and thank God not have any issues with flying after that, that just goes to show also how tough Bill Alfonso is. So this match will always be a huge highlight in Beulah's career. So now we're gonna go to how Beulah's had a great career thus far and starts to wind down in 1998. And I think that her send-off was perfect with Tommy Dreamer going against the Dudley Boys, and how they put her into retirement by breaking her neck and giving her the Dudley Death Drop finisher. And I just love that was like the hardcore way for Beulah to go into retirement. I thought it was a great send off. I don't think any wrestlers would want to go usually by just having like a cookie cutter moment. Usually you getting injured and it being like a life-threatening injury, to me, is always like a cool way to go out, because it showed that you were like hardcore all the way into the end. And I thought that was cool how Beulah's original ECW exit was. I thought that was really cool. So then we don't see Beulah in the original ECW again. We know that ECW closes in 2001, but we do get to see Beulah again as she made a shocking return at ECW One Night Stand. So on June 12th, 2005, WWE gave ECW a proper send-off and hosted the ECW One Night Stand event to a packed house at the Manhattan Center. So I love the location of this One Night Stand, the first One Night Stand pay-per-view. I love that, and we could say at this stage in WWE handling ECW, that it was a perfect send-off because they had all of their original players playing a part in it. Joey Styles on commentary, having Tommy Dreamer, if I'm correct, helped to book the event, or did all the booking for the event, having all the ECW originals actually come back. It was just really a love letter to ECW. And with everyone knowing that Tommy Dreamer was going to perform and close out the show, I think all the fans were content with that. But no one really knew that Beulah was going to come out and assist Tommy in the match at the end. And let me tell you, there was some huge pops in the night. But when Francine came out, which got a huge pop, and it should have, when Beulah came out to make sure that Francine wasn't going to do anything to hurt her guy, that pop when both Francine and Beulah actually met again eye to eye was huge. I think it was one of the biggest pops of the night for that event. And I love that not only did the guys get their send off with ECW, with having ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, but the women did too. And they were able to see at that time, which would have been 4 years after ECW closed its doors, that the fans really loved their characters and that they missed them. So I thought that was really cool that they got that moment. And the part that was so genuine and that you could see the fans kind of got in their feelings about too was when Tommy and Beulah look at each other for from opposite sides of the ring and they come together to hug. Because if we're keeping with kayfabe, technically it would look like Tommy and Beulah haven't seen each other since she left in 1998. So I thought it was cool that they had that moment. Even and it's like in his ECW fashion because this is such a tender moment, but Tommy Dreamer's face is covered in blood, and they're still embracing as if this is like a romance film. So I just thought that was so cute that they were still able to have that tender moment, even in this very hardcore match that's still taking place. So just like I said, the first ECW One Night Stand was a great send off for the managers, wrestlers, valets, and announcers to know that they mattered and that their contributions to wrestling were just as good and just as big as WWE or ECW. Now, we thought at the time as fans that that was possibly going to be the last time that we saw Beulah, but in 2006, Beulah came back to participate in a 6-person tag match with Tommy Dreamer, Beulah, and Terry Funk on one side, Edge, Mick Foley, and Lita on the other. This was one of my favorite in-ring matches and promos that I saw from Beulah. Just to set the scene, Mick Foley was enjoying being a top guy in WWE at this point and became a self-proclaimed sellout and aligned himself with the rated R superstar Edge. After their fiery hardcore match at WrestleMania 22, I guess both guys thought that it's better to join forces than get into another bloody brawl. So leading up to One Night Stand, Mick Foley and Edge are attacking Tommy Dreamer and Terry Funk, not only just physically, but also berating Tommy and Terry as if they didn't actually make any contributions and they were just in the very lowbrow ECW, and that's all the history that they have. So of course it made sense that Terry and Tommy would represent ECW in this match. And of course, Edge and Mick Foley at this point are bleeding raw in WWE blood. That's all they want to represent. So in this build-up, Lita was very active in the assaults to Tommy and Terry. So it was only fitting that Beulah would be brought in to accompany Dreamer and Tommy. So no one really knows, but at the time when they come out, that's when you see that Beulah is with Tommy and with Terry, and that gets a huge pop. And she immediately gets into Lita's face, takes the mic, and makes it clear that she's going to turn this match into a 3-on-3 mixed tag match. This match, guys, was insanely brutal. It really was. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. And it really took all the competitors to that limit. Beulah and Lita didn't see much in-ring action, as was to be expected, especially with all of the weapons that was being used. But when they did get in the match, it made an impact. Lita slammed herself onto barbed wire covered baseball bat that landed directly on Tommy Dreamer's nether regions, shall we say, to be polite. And shortly thereafter, Beulah finally got into the match with Tommy Dreamer and did a double DDT to both Mick Foley and Edge. Of course, there had to be a cat fight between Beulah and Lita that got a huge pop, and of course Joey Styles doing the infamous cat fight shout, and that got the crowd going. This celebration that Beulah was having was short-lived because Edge attacks Tommy Dreamer and leaves a very vulnerable Beulah in the ring with Edge alone. He wastes no time sparing the hell out of her and getting the most provocative pin in history to get the win from the match. Tommy, Funk, and Beulah didn't take the win, but it was a very strong showing, and to me was a highlight on the pay-per-view. It was a great send-off to me and for Beulah. In my opinion, we don't see her compete again, but I think that was to be expected. It was just a nice showing and a nice appearance to see Beulah once again stand by Tommy, stand by Terry Funk, who she loves dearly, and to just have a really good moment. I really liked the chemistry that Beulah and Lita had. It would have been cool to see them do something else, but at the same time, if it was perfect then, there's no point in trying to recreate it when you don't know how the next step might be. So this is really the end of like any in-ring wrestling appearances that you see from Beulah. And once again, why, would you be sad about that as a fan? Because I feel that one of the biggest strengths that Beulah has is if she's going to make an appearance, it has to make sense, and it really has to be something that's important. That way, the fans don't grow tired of you, and when you do come back, you get the pops that Beulah got when she would make appearances. And I just think overall, to me, if you want to list someone that has had a very strong managerial run and was a part of some great moments in history, Beulah certainly has to be attached to that and a part of those conversations. Just like I said, she was able to have a very strong career from starting from a really strong feud that has stood the test of time as one of fans from wherever. Like, you don't have to be like a super duper ECW fan to really marvel at the storyline and the build up and the longevity of the feud between Tommy Dreamer and Raven. But then to be a fan of that chemistry and that bond that Tommy Dreamer and Beulah had when they were together after that was just, I don't think you can replicate that. It was just brilliant. And I love looking back on Beulah's run in ECW. And I hope that you enjoyed taking this time capsule back and opening it up and looking at Beulah's career. I really enjoyed doing the research for this episode. It really brought back some great memories on why I became a fan of ECW. And I think as much as we love talking about the hardcore things that went into ECW, I think the storylines were just as strong and should be recognized for the gems that they were. And Beulah certainly playing a huge part in that. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you never looked up Beulah's involvement in ECW, I really encourage you to do that. I'm excited for the woman that I'm going to be covering next week. And yeah, just go back, look at those awesome moments. Comment on what was some of your favorite Beulah moments. How did you feel about Beulah telling Raven that she was actually involved with Tommy and dropping that bomb? How did you feel about her run with Tommy Dreamer, about her returning for ECW One Night Stand? Let me know all of that. And I hope you come back next week because I'm going to bring it again with another awesome woman from ECW. So I see you next week.